They cut my project, just like that, because I wasn't one of them. One moment I was leading my team, full of ideas and pride. The next, everything I worked for was handed to someone else. I sat at my desk, heart pounding, trying to grasp what just happened. How could they dismiss me so quietly, so coldly? That day, something inside me shifted. I knew I wasn't done yet. This wasn't the end. Before we start, type 1 if you've ever dreamed of getting revenge but never got the chance. No judgment here, and hit that subscribe button. We don't let betrayal slide around here, not even from people who don't subscribe. Let's continue. After that day, my world didn't collapse, at least not outwardly. I'm Laura, 34, a project manager at a mid-sized tech company. I've always poured my heart into my work, juggling deadlines, client calls, and the endless stream of meetings like a pro. My husband, David, and our toddler, Mia, were my anchors in the chaos. Home was my refuge, work my battlefield. But after the project was quietly snatched away from me, something changed. I noticed the subtle shifts around the office, the way Monica, my boss, lingered a little too long by the other team's desks, the sidelong glances when I passed. At meetings, my ideas were barely acknowledged, while the new lead basked in sudden attention. One afternoon, I caught Monica chatting in hushed tones with Greg, the junior analyst who had taken over my project. Their smirks and quick exchanges told me everything I needed to know. Instead of confronting them, I stayed calm, folding the pieces of what was happening into my mind. During lunch breaks, I started visiting the quiet corners of the office where the old project files were stored. I'd pull out reports, sketches, timelines, anything related to the work I had begun months ago. My fingers traced the notes I'd jotted on margins, the flowcharts I'd designed late at night. I wasn't just preserving memories. I was rebuilding my foundation. One evening, as I was reviewing code snippets in the empty conference room, Mark from IT popped his head in. "Burning the midnight oil again, huh?" I smiled without looking up. "Just making sure nothing gets lost." He nodded, glancing at the scattered papers. "If anyone asks, you're here late, got your back." That small gesture felt like a lifeline. Mark wasn't in management, but his quiet support was a reminder that not everyone was blind to what was happening. I also began to subtly update my personal notes with improvements and alternative solutions, things that hadn't been explored yet. When a colleague mentioned a bug in the current project, I made mental notes of the issues, noting how my original approach could have avoided them. Outside work, I stayed the same supportive wife and mom, never letting my frustrations spill over. David asked one night, "You okay? You've been quieter lately." I reached for his hand. "I'm fine, just thinking." He squeezed my hand. "If you need me, I'm here." That steadiness at home fueled my determination. I wasn't going to let a politics game erase years of effort. Quietly, I refined my prototype in my spare time, experimenting with tweaks and enhancements that the official project lacked. I coded late into the night, tested features on my laptop during Mia's naps, and drafted new workflow diagrams that streamlined processes further. I wasn't shouting my intentions, I was building something no one expected. And I could feel the momentum gathering beneath the surface, ready to rise when the time was right. Weeks had passed since my project was taken away, and I kept my head down, pretending everything was fine. Then came the day I dreaded, but also the day that set everything in motion. It was a regular Monday morning. The office buzzed with its usual hum, but something in the air felt different. I was at my desk, reviewing some data when Monica called me into the conference room. My heart skipped a beat. As I walked in, Greg was already there, smirking just enough to make me uncomfortable. Monica's face was unreadable, cool and composed. "Laura," Monica began, "we need to talk about your role moving forward." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sure." Monica pulled out a file and slid it across the table. "The upper management has decided to cut your involvement in the new client project. Instead, we're reassigning you to support roles." I blinked. "Support roles?" "Yes," Monica said crisply. "They want someone who fits better with the team's direction." I swallowed hard, the words hitting me like a cold splash of water. Greg chimed in. "We thought it'd be better if I took over your previous responsibilities. It's a chance for fresh perspectives." I glanced at him, the man who had barely been here a year now stepping into my shoes. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to breathe. "Understood," I said, voice low but clear. As I left the room, the walls seemed to close in around me. Back at my desk, the usual buzz felt deafening. People glanced at me with thinly veiled pity or curiosity. The office had become a minefield of whispered conversations and sideways looks. Later, I overheard Monica telling another manager, "Laura just doesn't have the right connections. It's better for the project." That stung deeper than any criticism of my work. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, stirring my tea slowly. David watched me, concern evident in his eyes. "Talk to me," he urged gently. I shook my head. "They cut me out, David, like I'm some outsider." He reached over, took my hand. "You're not, you're better than that." His faith was the only light in that heavy moment, but inside a storm was brewing. I couldn't just accept being sidelined. Over the next days, I noticed Greg acting differently, carrying himself with a newfound confidence, parroting ideas that I'd once championed. Monica's approval seemed unwavering. I felt the sting of betrayal, but it was laced with something else, a burning urge to fight back. I wasn't about to fade into the background. One afternoon, as I passed the glass-walled meeting room, I caught Greg mid-presentation, using a diagram I had sketched months ago, one that no one else had access to. He glanced up and caught my eye, a smug grin flashing. I didn't look away. That moment crystallized everything. I had been erased, but I still had the knowledge, the skills, and the will. I decided then that I would reclaim what was mine, not with loud protests, but with quiet, unyielding resolve. The next morning, I returned to my workspace with a new plan forming in my mind. The game had changed, and I was ready to play. The moment I realized Greg was using my work without credit, I knew I had to act carefully. This wasn't about petty jealousy anymore, it was about protecting the integrity of everything I had built. But yelling or confronting Monica and Greg directly wouldn't help. I needed something solid, undeniable. Proof. So I began to gather my own evidence piece by piece without raising suspicion. One morning, when the office was still waking up, I stopped by the supply room on the second floor. I slipped in just as Janet, the office assistant, was sorting through some folders. "Hey Janet," I said casually, "do you remember when I handed you the project files last quarter? I think some of them got mixed up." Janet looked up, surprised but helpful. "Oh, the ones for the client software. Yeah, I think a few were missing from the shelf. Could you check if those files are still there? I want to make sure everything's intact for the upcoming audit," I said with a smile. She nodded and began digging through the cabinet. After a few minutes, she pulled out a thick folder labeled Client Project Laura Development. I took it, pretending to browse through the pages, all the while noting the original timelines and annotations I'd made. "Thanks, Janet. This really helps," I said, slipping the folder into my bag. As I left, I caught her watching me thoughtfully. I smiled back. I'd need allies, even small ones, if I wanted to hold on to my truth. Later that week, during a routine meeting, I made sure to bring my tablet loaded with the original designs and code snippets I had developed before the project was reassigned. When Greg presented his improved version, I quietly tapped on my tablet and pulled up my earlier work, matching it slide by slide with what he was showing. A few curious eyes glanced over, and I caught Monica's face tightening ever so slightly. Greg's confident smile faltered for a second. After the meeting, I stayed behind and approached Monica. "Monica, can we have a moment? I want to clarify some things about the project," I said firmly but politely. She glanced at Greg and then back at me, her expression cool. "Sure, Laura, what is it?" I opened my tablet and showed her the dated files, versions, and timestamps. "These are the original frameworks and algorithms I developed. The timeline here clearly shows the work predates the current version being implemented." Monica's eyes flicked over the screen. "This is interesting," she said carefully. "More than interesting," I added. "It's evidence that the current project owes a lot to my initial development. I believe it deserves proper recognition, not just for credit, but because some features in the current model have critical flaws I flagged months ago." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'll review this." That evening, I met Mark at our favorite cafe, the one quiet spot where we could talk without interruptions. "You're really going for it, huh?" Mark said with a smirk as I laid out my strategy. "I have to," I replied. "It's not just about pride anymore. If I don't protect this, it'll all be lost, my work, my reputation." Mark nodded. "You've got the skills and now you've got the proof. Just be careful with Monica. She's got power." "I know," I sighed, "but this isn't just about power, it's about fairness." Mark raised his coffee cup. "To fairness and to you." I smiled, feeling the weight of the fight ahead, but also the strength growing inside me. Back at the office, I started to document every interaction related to the project. I saved emails, took screenshots of meetings, recorded versions of presentations. I even noted down conversations when Greg casually claimed ownership of ideas I had shared only within the team. One afternoon, I caught Greg copying some files from the shared drive onto his personal USB. I approached quietly. "Greg, what's on the USB?" I asked with a neutral tone. He looked startled but shrugged. "Just some backup stuff." "Mind if I check it later?" I asked casually. He hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." I made a mental note to review that drive carefully. That evening, while Mia was asleep, I stayed up cross-referencing the files Greg had taken with my own versions. There were glaring overlaps. Some of my comments were even in the documents he claimed as his own. I saved all the findings into a secure folder, backing it up in multiple places. The evidence was stacking up. I wasn't just the sidelined project manager anymore. I was the one quietly building the case to reclaim what was mine. Every piece I gathered was a silent strike, a thread tightening around the truth. The foundation was solid. Now I just had to wait for the right moment to make my move. The day I decided to confront Monica and Greg, I felt the weight of everything I'd gathered in my hands, not just the files and emails, but the months of silent resolve. It was time to stop hiding behind quiet diligence and bring the truth into the open. I scheduled a meeting with Monica, requesting it be just the two of us. She agreed without hesitation, too confident, I thought. Greg would be there too, as the project lead. When I stepped into the glass-walled conference room, Greg was already sprawled in his chair, smirking like he owned the place. Monica sat beside him, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp and calculating. "Laura," Monica greeted, voice cool, "what did you want to discuss?" I pulled my laptop out and set it on the table. "The project," I said firmly. "I think it's time we cleared the air." Greg raised an eyebrow. "Clear the air, what do you mean?" I clicked the first slide. Dated documents, original project drafts, code snippets time-stamped months before Greg's involvement. "This," I said, pointing at the screen, "is the foundation I built. The early versions, the original algorithms, the design documents, been using these without acknowledgement." Greg's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, but Monica's face remained composed. "Laura," Monica said slowly, "projects evolve. Everyone builds on previous work." "True," I nodded. "But building on my work is different from taking credit for it and ignoring the critical issues I raised." I scrolled to a slide comparing my original flowchart with the current implementation. "This version," I explained, "includes fixes for vulnerabilities that were overlooked. These errors are already causing setbacks." Monica's eyes flicked toward Greg. "Is that accurate?" Greg shrugged. "Minor glitches. Nothing I can't handle." I shook my head. "They're bigger than you think. I have the documentation from quality control and client feedback." At that moment, I shared the emails between Monica and the client, where Monica had downplayed the severity of the problems. Monica's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "Laura, why bring this up now?" "Because," I said, locking eyes with her, "this project is important to the company's reputation. And it's important that the right people get credit and responsibility." Greg stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Are you accusing me of stealing ideas?" I remained seated steady. "I'm stating facts. You presented my work as your own without attribution, and you ignored my warnings about the design flaws." Greg's face flushed. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" I stood, pulling out the folder with copies of emails, meeting notes, and file metadata. "Here's the timeline, the communications, the versions. You can call it overreacting if you want." Monica sighed, rubbing her temples. "This isn't how I wanted things to go, Laura, but you've made your point clear." I softened my tone. "I want to fix this, not tear the team apart. Let's figure out a way forward." Monica looked at Greg, who was still glaring. "We'll review the evidence and reassess the project leadership." After the meeting, I left feeling a strange mix of relief and tension. It wasn't over yet, but the balance had shifted. Later, Mark found me by the coffee machine. "You shook things up today," he said with a grin. "I had to," I replied. "It's not just about winning, it's about respect." He nodded. "You showed strength and smarts, that's what counts." That night David asked how it went. I smiled tiredly. "It's a start." He pulled me close. "I'm proud of you." The next weeks were a whirlwind. Monica and the parent company began a formal review of the project documents. Greg's role was questioned, and some team members quietly began to reach out to me again. One afternoon, Monica called me into her office. "I've talked with upper management," she said. "Your prototype is being reconsidered for implementation." I felt a rush of vindication. "Thank you." Monica's eyes held something like respect. You made us see what we missed. That moment was the turning point, not just in my career but in how I saw myself. I wasn't just a sidelined employee anymore. I was a force to be reckoned with, someone who had turned betrayal into strength, silence into power. The fight wasn't over, but I'd claimed my place, and I was ready for whatever came next. The days that followed Monica's announcement felt like a whirlwind, a sharp turn after months of quiet struggle. I could almost taste the change in the air, something shifting, something real. The parent company was serious about reconsidering my prototype, and the momentum was finally on my side. The first step was presenting the refined model to the extended leadership team. I worked closely with Mark and a few trusted colleagues, including Sarah from Quality Control, who had always respected my attention to detail. In the conference room, the atmosphere buzzed with a mixture of curiosity and cautious optimism. As I connected my laptop to the projector, Sarah gave me an encouraging nod. "You've got this, Laura," she whispered. I smiled, taking a deep breath. "Thank you all for being here," I began. "What you'll see today is the culmination of months of work improving our original design to address the issues flagged during previous testing." I navigated through the slides, highlighting key fixes and enhancements, each point backed by data, client feedback, and real-world tests. When I demonstrated the new error-handling protocols, I could see heads nodding in approval. Greg sat in the corner, his usual smug demeanor replaced by a guarded expression. After the presentation, Monica leaned forward, her tone measured. "This is impressive, Laura. The improvements address critical concerns." One of the senior managers, James, raised a hand. "Can we see a side-by-side comparison with the current system in use?" Mark quickly pulled up the comparative analysis on his tablet. "As you can see," I explained, "the prototype reduces processing errors by over 30%, and the updated interface improves user efficiency significantly." James tapped the screen thoughtfully. "This could save the company considerable resources." A buzz of murmurs spread through the room. The tide was turning. Later that afternoon, Monica stopped by my desk. "The board wants a pilot implementation. You'll lead it." My heart fluttered. "I won't let you down." She nodded. "Good, you've earned this." That evening, David greeted me with a warm hug. "Looks like the hard work is paying off." I leaned into him. "It's just the beginning." The pilot phase was intense. I coordinated with IT, client services, and our testing teams, staying on top of every detail. Mark became my right hand, troubleshooting technical glitches alongside me. One morning, as we reviewed feedback reports, Sarah pointed out a minor bug in the new interface. "Found a glitch in the user input validation," she said, frowning. I glanced at the data. "Thanks, Sarah. Let's fix that immediately." Mark pulled up the code, typing swiftly to patch the issue. By the end of the week, the pilot showed marked improvements. Client satisfaction scores climbed, and internal teams reported smoother operations. In one team meeting, Monica addressed the group. "I want to acknowledge Laura's leadership in this pilot. Her dedication and expertise have made a real difference." Applause filled the room. I caught Greg's eyes, and for the first time, he didn't look so certain. The recognition wasn't just professional, it sparked something inside me. Confidence. A quiet pride that steadied me through the toughest days. Outside work, I felt lighter. David and I planned a weekend getaway, a chance to recharge and celebrate the small victories. At home, Mia's laughter filled the rooms as I shared stories from the office, her innocent joy reminding me why I fought so hard. One night over coffee, David said, "I'm proud of how far you've come, you never gave up." I smiled. It wasn't easy, but it's worth it. The pilot's success opened doors. Invitations to lead new projects, requests for my input on company strategies. My calendar filled with meetings, presentations, and collaborations that once seemed out of reach. I noticed colleagues reaching out with genuine interest, seeking my advice and support. The distance I'd felt in the past began to close, yet I remained grounded. The fight had taught me resilience, patience, and the power of quiet strength. As the pilot wrapped up, Monica approached me. "You've changed the narrative here, Laura. The company sees your value now." I nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment tempered by the knowledge that the journey wasn't over. "Thank you, Monica. I'm ready for what's next." She smiled, a hint of respect shining through. "We'll make sure you get the chance to prove it." That moment marked not just a professional victory, but a personal transformation. I had reclaimed my place, reshaped my story, and stepped into a future I was ready to own. The days that followed the pilot project were a turning point, not just for me, but for everyone involved. The tide had shifted, and I could see the ripple effects unfolding around the office, as well as in the quiet corners where decisions were being made. Monica's tone toward me softened, though there was still a guarded edge. During one team meeting, she announced, "We're expanding Laura's pilot across other departments. Her approach has proven valuable." I caught Greg's eyes across the room. The flicker of unease was unmistakable. He no longer smirked with confidence. Instead, he avoided direct eye contact, his posture more reserved. One afternoon, Mark approached my desk holding a freshly printed memo. "Looks like Greg's being reassigned," he said quietly. I looked up, surprised. "He'll be leading a smaller support team," Mark explained. "Sounds like the higher-ups want to limit his involvement in core projects." A mix of vindication and pity crossed my mind, but I said nothing. David noticed the change too. "You've turned the tables," he said one evening as Mia played nearby. I nodded, watching Mia's bright eyes. It wasn't just about the project. It was about standing my ground. With the pilot's success, the parent company offered me a promotion, team lead for the new initiative I'd developed. The title was a symbol, yes, but more importantly, it was a door opening to influence and respect. One morning, I walked into Monica's office to discuss resource allocation for the expanded rollout. "Laura," Monica began, "I want to acknowledge how much you've contributed. This company's seen what it's been missing." I smiled, feeling the weight of those words. She hesitated, then added, "I hope this experience has made things clearer for all of us." I replied honestly, "It's shown me the importance of transparency and trust." Meanwhile, the legal team approached me with questions about the project's intellectual property. It turned out my original prototype was formally recognized as company property. But with my documented contributions, I was granted rights to lead its future development and receive performance bonuses. The financial recognition was meaningful, but what truly mattered was the validation. One afternoon, I sat with Sarah from Quality Control, discussing new features for the next phase. "You've changed the way this team works," Sarah said, smiling. "People respect you now." "I'm just doing what I should have been allowed to do from the start," I replied. Outside the office, friendships deepened. Mark and I shared quiet laughs over late-night troubleshooting sessions. David supported every step, his unwavering belief a constant source of strength. Yet not everything was perfect. Monica's previous favoritism had left scars. Some colleagues still kept their distance, unsure where their loyalties lay. But I focused on building bridges, fostering collaboration through results and kindness rather than politics. One day, as I left the office, I saw Greg packing his belongings. Our eyes met briefly. "Good luck," I said quietly. He nodded, no words exchanged. That moment symbolized closure. I wasn't the outsider anymore. I was a leader, recognized and respected. The journey had tested me in ways I hadn't expected, but it had also revealed a resilience I didn't know I possessed. As I walked home that evening, the city lights reflecting in the windows, I felt a calm confidence settle over me. The past was behind me, the future open, and I was ready. The office was quieter these days, not because work had slowed, but because the storm had finally settled. I walked through the halls with a steadiness that had been missing for years, and the nods of recognition from colleagues no longer felt like surprises, but like acknowledgments of a journey that had transformed me. Each glance and greeting carried weight, a subtle respect earned through perseverance. One morning, David and Mia joined me for a casual lunch at a nearby cafe. Mia, her cheeks rosy with excitement, spilled a bit of juice but giggled without worry. David leaned across the table, eyes warm. "You've come a long way," he said softly. I smiled, watching Mia's carefree laughter dance through the air. "It hasn't been easy, but I'm finally living on my terms." David nodded. "And you've inspired me too, to stand taller." Later, back at the office, Monica stopped by my desk holding a small, carefully wrapped box. She hesitated a moment, then smiled. "Thought you might like this." Inside was a sleek plaque engraved with elegant lettering, "For outstanding leadership and innovation." Her eyes met mine, sincere and unguarded. "You earned every bit of it." That moment felt like the closing of a chapter, the final acknowledgement not just of my work, but of the woman who refused to be sidelined. The battles, the sleepless nights, the quiet determination, they were all woven into that small piece of metal now sitting on my desk. The promotion brought new challenges. Leading a team meant more than managing tasks. It meant nurturing people, building trust, and creating space where ideas flourished regardless of rank or tenure. I committed myself to be a leader who listened as much as she directed. One afternoon, as we brainstormed strategies around the conference table, Sarah leaned back and said, "You've made a real difference. This team feels like a family now." I looked around the room, seeing bright, eager faces, some young and new, others seasoned but re-energized. That sense of belonging was the reward I hadn't expected but deeply cherished. At home, life blossomed in its own way. Mia's first steps filled the house with joyous clatters, while David and I found new rhythms, balancing parenting, careers, and moments stolen for just the two of us. One evening, after tucking Mia into bed, she looked up with wide, trusting eyes and whispered, "Mommy, you're the best." My heart swelled beyond words, "And you're my greatest joy." Through it all, I carried the lessons learned, the power of resilience, the strength in patience, and the importance of trusting oneself even when the world seems to doubt you. The past betrayal no longer haunted me. It had been the catalyst that ignited a fire within. Looking ahead, my mind filled with plans, not just for projects, but for mentorship programs aimed at empowering young women navigating the corporate world. I wanted no one else to feel alone in a battle I'd fought silently for so long. At a recent company event, I stood before a group of interns, sharing my story not with bitterness but with hope. "Sometimes the hardest moments become the most powerful opportunities," I told them. "Believe in your value and don't let anyone else define your worth." The room erupted in applause, and as I looked out at their eager faces, I felt a profound sense of purpose. The future stretched before me, bright, inviting, and full of possibility. I was ready to embrace it fully, confident, independent, and wiser for every step of the journey behind me.